Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into something pretty heavy?
Yeah, buckle up.
We're talking about authoritarianism
Mm-hmm.
and how to reverse it.
Big topic.
You shared this article,
Yeah.
Reversing Authoritarianism, Strategies for Resistance and Democratic Transition, and just glancing at it.
Right.
It's a daunting challenge, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe let's start with the bad news.
Okay.
The article definitely doesn't sugarcoat anything.
No, it does not.
Authoritarian regimes,
Mm-hmm.
they really know how to hold on to power.
They wrote the playbook.
Yeah.
And it's not just about brute force either.
Right.
It's about manipulating information.
Mm-hmm.
Like imagine a country where the only news you're allowed to see is state-run media,
Right.
just constantly blasting out propaganda,
Yeah.
painting anyone who disagrees as a terrorist or a traitor.
It's scary how they can warp reality.
It really is. It's insidious.
And that's why it's so important to build that internal pressure. But how do you push back when you can't even see the enemy clearly?
Well, the article lays out 3 core strategies for domestic resistance.
Okay, let's hear them.
You need a strong opposition,
Okay.
even if it's operating in the shadows. Think like underground newspapers, secret meetings,
Right.
keeping that spark of resistance alive.
But wouldn't that be super dangerous for the people involved?
Absolutely, it takes a ton of courage.
Yeah.
The second strategy is mass civil disobedience.
Okay.
Building on that core of resistance, we're talking strikes that cripple the economy, boycotts, protests that just flood the streets.
So basically make it impossible for the regime to function.
Exactly. Disruption is key.
Okay, I like it.
And the third strategy, which is really interesting to me,
Yeah.
splitting the regime's power base.
Okay, so even dictators need support from somewhere, right?
You got it. The military elites, wealthy business owners,
Right.
those are the folks propping up the regime.
So if you can peel away those layers of support,
Exactly.
the whole thing could topple.
Precisely isolate those at the very top.
Makes sense.
Now, the article also emphasizes nonviolent movements.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
I know, it seems counterintuitive.
Right. Like, wouldn't you need overwhelming force?
Well, think about it this way. Nonviolent movements, they attract a lot of support both domestically and internationally.
Okay.
When people see their fellow citizens risking their lives for freedom but refusing to resort to violence,
Right.
it's powerful.
It's a moral high ground?
Exactly. It makes it way harder for the regime to paint the opposition as the bad guys.
Yeah, it really shifts the narrative.
Right. And it puts pressure on their own supporters to question who the real villains are.
Makes sense.
Like Gandhi leading the Salt March,
Oh, yeah.
the Civil Rights Movement here in the U.S.
Right.
These were powerful movements.
So it's about winning hearts and minds, not just territory.
I got it.
But even with all this internal pressure,
Yeah.
I imagine you still need outside help to really bring down a regime like that.
Oh, absolutely. That's where international pressure comes in.
Okay.
It's like shining a spotlight on the regime's abuses for the whole world to see.
And that's where sanctions and diplomatic isolation come in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Targeting the regime's elites with sanctions, for example.
All right.
Hit them where it hurts their wallets, travel their status.
But doesn't that risk hurting ordinary citizens too?
Yeah, it's a tough balance.
Right.
That's why targeted sanctions are so important.
Mm-hmm.
Pressure on those propping up the regime.
Not the people already suffering.
Right.
So we've got this internal pressure building from the resistance,
Yeah.
external pressure from the international community.
Right.
What else is there?
Well, it's kind of like we've been talking about how to tear the old house down.
Right.
But what comes next?
Yeah. What do you build in its place?
Exactly. How do you
Yeah.
build something better?
And it's not like getting rid of the dictator automatically creates a democracy.
Not at all. It's
Right.
not just flipping a switch.
No.
And that's where this article gets really fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it talks about this transition phase.
Right. To a democratic government.
Okay, so where do you even start?
Well, the article highlights 3 key things.
Okay.
A clear plan,
Okay.
accountability for past abuses,
Right.
and a commitment to inclusive governance.
Okay, so let's break those down.
Yeah.
Starting with the plan.
Okay, so it can't just be, okay, the dictator's gone, now what?
Right. We need a roadmap
Exactly.
Yep.
It's a step-by-step guide to rebuild the country.
from the ground up.
Yeah, think about it. How are you going to organize free and fair elections?
Right.
How will the Constitution be rewritten to guarantee basic rights?
Mm-hmm.
How do you reform the courts, the media?
Yeah, to make sure they're actually independent.
Right, not just tools for the next strongman.
It's a lot to figure out.
It is.
And how do you deal with the legacy of the old regime?
Yeah, that's a really crucial point.
All the people who were harmed, the injustices.
The article talks about accountability,
Right.
but also the danger of revenge.
Right. We don't want to just create a new set of victims. Exactly. You don't want the victims of the old regime becoming the perpetrators of the new one.
So how do you find that balance?
It's tough. The article mentions things like truth and reconciliation commissions.
Oh, yeah.
Victims can share their stories.
Right.
Perpetrators can confess their crimes.
Sometimes even get amnesty.
Right. It's about acknowledging the past,
Right.
but also moving forward.
So not necessarily about punishment.
More about healing and understanding.
Yeah.
It's a long process, for sure.
Right.
Often messy and imperfect.
But you need that accountability to move on.
Absolutely.
Okay, what about inclusive governance?
Yeah. That means making sure all groups in society have a voice.
Different parties, ethnicities,
And
religions.
you can't just replace one oppressive group with another.
Right.
The goal is for everyone to feel represented.
To have a stake in the country's future.
Exactly.
So it's about changing the whole power structure,
Right.
creating a system that's truly fair.
You gotta call it.
This might involve power-sharing agreements.
Proportional representation in the legislature.
Right.
Even giving regional governments more autonomy.
So the power isn't concentrated in one place.
Exactly.
It sounds like building a lasting democracy is even harder than getting rid of the dictator.
Oh, it's incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And the article is clear. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
Every transition is different.
Every country's unique.
Exactly. But there's something really hopeful about this article.
Yeah, it shows it can be done.
Right.
People have actually succeeded.
Against incredible odds.
So let's talk about those success stories.
Let's do it.
What are some examples of movements that actually took down these regimes?
And transition to some form of democracy.
Yeah.
Well, the article highlights a few really powerful cases.
Okay, lay 'em on me.
Poland's solidarity movement.
Okay.
South Africa's struggle against apartheid.
Yeah.
The overthrow of Pinochet in Chile.
Right.
The fall of Slobodan Milosevic in Serbia.
So many different examples.
Each one is unique, of course.
Yeah.
But they do share some common threads.
Like what?
Well, for one, they all involved incredibly brave people.
Oh, yeah. People willing to risk everything.
Absolutely. But it's more than just individual courage.
Okay.
These movements, they were successful because they understood power.
Oh, yeah.
And they used really smart strategies to chip away at that regime's control.
Let's dive into one of those examples.
Sure.
The solidarity movement in Poland always stands out to me.
Yeah.
This trade union taking down a communist regime, it's wild.
It's an incredible story.
It is.
Solidarity started as a movement for workers' rights.
Right.
But it grew into this massive force for democratic change.
Wow.
Millions of people joined from all walks of life.
Yeah.
They organized strikes that basically paralyzed the country.
Wow.
They created underground newspapers and schools.
To counter the propaganda.
Exactly. They even held free cultural events.
Just to express themselves.
Right, asserting their right to self-expression.
So they weren't just fighting against something, they were building something new.
You got it, and the regime couldn't crush it.
What did they try?
They tried everything. Forced intimidation. They even imposed martial law.
Wow.
But the movement just kept growing stronger.
So what happened?
Eventually, they had to negotiate with Solidarity,
Really?
led to semi-free elections, and that was the beginning of the end for communist rule in Poland.
That's amazing.
It really shows the power of a united front.
People coming together and saying, enough.
Exactly.
And it reminds me of something else the article talks about, persistence.
Yes. Solidarity didn't win overnight.
Right? It took years.
Years of struggle, adapting their tactics, facing setbacks, but never giving up hope.
It's a reminder that change takes time
It
and dedication and a willingness to keep fighting even when it's tough.
Absolutely. And don't forget about international pressure.
All right? Like sanctions.
Exactly. Sanctions, diplomatic isolation, legal action through international courts.
You can really weaken those regimes.
And support the resistance movements within the country.
Yeah, like you said earlier, shining a spotlight on those abuses.
It makes a huge difference.
Undermines their legitimacy.
Right.
Makes it harder for them to operate.
Exactly.
And it gives courage to those fighting for change.
It tells them the world is watching.
They can't hide forever.
Nope.
So what are some of the big takeaways from all these examples?
Well, first, never underestimate your own power.
Our own power.
Yeah, even small acts of defiance when there are enough of them.
Right.
It creates a force that can't be ignored.
So find that courage to stand up for what you believe in.
Even when it's scary.
Even when it feels impossible.
Right. And find your people.
Your tribe.
Exactly. Connect with others who share your values.
Because it can be lonely fighting for change.
It can.
You need that support to keep going.
Absolutely. And finally, never give up hope.
Never give up hope.
We've seen it time and time again.
Yeah.
Even the most brutal regimes, they're not invincible.
Wow.
Change is possible.
That's powerful.
It takes belief, action, and persistence.
I am feeling incredibly inspired right now.
Me too.
This deep dive has been heavy, but it's a good reminder that we all have a role to play
We do.
in shaping the world.
Absolutely.
It's been amazing exploring this with you.
Likewise.
And everyone listening out there, remember, knowledge is power.
But only if you use it.
Stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop fighting for a better world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
That's a wrap on this deep dive. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those hearts courageous.